Today we're talking about your metabolism, turbo metabolism in connection with losing weight. What does this term actually mean, and why do we keep hearing it in connection with weight loss? And that's what we're going to take a closer look at today. And by the way, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, and of course if you subscribe to my channel. Metabolism is actually the foundation of all life. Everyone, including you of course, should understand what the purpose of metabolism actually is and how you can specifically optimize it naturally. And this includes, among other things, carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism, and fat metabolism, but also the metabolism of micronutrients. So all of that is included in the term metabolism. No, metabolism is actually the sum of all processes in our body that are necessary to make sure that all substances get exactly where they are needed throughout the entire body. And they are also brought into the appropriate states by breaking down, rebuilding, or assembling them so they can fulfill their specific tasks there. But that's not all, because there are also products of metabolism that are produced which simply don't belong in our body anymore. These are the metabolic waste products, and metabolism also has to work in such a way that these metabolic breakdown products can leave our body again. And of course, it's best if these wastes leave before they can cause any harm. The fact is that most of the time, when it comes to metabolism, people only consider the supply of substances to the cells. By the way, that's called the anabolic or building part of metabolism. That's true, that's a very important task. And for that, by the way, food is broken down in the mouth depending on how well or not so well it is chewed. In the gastrointestinal tract, further broken down and digested. And then it reaches the target cells, where it is converted into the energy that each cell needs. But just as important is the other part, the so-called catabolic part of metabolism, where substances that the body no longer needs are broken down. And then, ideally, they can leave our body again without any hindrance, so that they don't accumulate and, for example, block the way for new smearing. We know that metabolic waste products can also accumulate somewhere in our fascia network or in the capillaries, in the smaller vessels, in the spaces between the cells. And of course, they can block the way there for fresh substances that are supposed to be provided by the anabolic metabolism. And in my opinion and experience, the increasing impairment of the detoxification organs due to their overload is by far the most important cause for the development of lifestyle diseases. So what can you actually do in practice now to activate your metabolism? And if you are one of those who also have a few extra kilos, of course, optimize it in such a way that you also lose weight. And now here are my 6 best tips for what you can do. Yes, number 1. Let's get started. Who would have thought with exercise? In fact, exercise is the most important driver for muscle contractions to occur, so that the muscles tense and relax, tense and relax. These actually compress the veins, causing the blood to flow toward the heart through a valve effect. However, even more important is the contraction of our muscles, that is, physical movement, for the flow through the capillaries. These are our finest vessels in our body, the so-called capillaries. These capillaries are, believe it or not, if you were to connect them one after another, 150,160,000 kilometers long, so it's actually almost unimaginable. And through these capillaries, through these tiny blood vessels, substances that have already been broken down into the smallest particles diffuse, meaning they move into the network of connective tissue, that is, into the spaces between the cells. And then, of course, to successfully reach their destination, the individual body cells, in order to supply them again. Yes, And that's why movement is so important, because only regular physical activity ensures that this network, these fascial tissue structures, remain free from tangles, and the substances can simply reach the cells without any obstacles, and can also leave the cell again once they have been used up. It's also important so that these tiny particles can actually enter the cells, that the cell wall tension is sufficient. So we actually have a physical tension on every single cell wall. And our body movement also contributes significantly to this, because it generates electrical voltages in the body through piezoelectric effects. And that's exactly how it works in the other direction as well. That means, for example, when it comes to disposing of the cells, conclusion, as sorry as I am, but it's important, exercise is a must. Tip number 2, and just to stay on the topic of exercise for a moment. But be careful, something is coming. Chewing is also a form of movement, and that's what it's about now. The fact is that chewing burns calories. That's already pretty interesting. So that's why, if you want to lose weight, you should definitely chew. The more thoroughly, the better. It's best to chew until the entire food pulp is completely liquefied. But chewing also has another effect, yes, because it's also about our metabolism. When we chew properly, the food is already so well pre-digested that the stomach's digestive work is also massively relieved. You also get full much faster because of it. And of course, the individual components of the food also get to where they need to go much faster, namely into the cells. And when you chew properly and your stomach is also filled with additional digestive juices, you feel full much, much faster. And then your brain simply sends you the message, hey, that's enough, you're full. And now comes tip number 3. You can actually boost your metabolism with the right foods. It's quite simple if you know the right foods, of course, and you'll find out in a moment. These include in particular all legumes. Legumes, just to elaborate a bit on what kind of foods these actually are. These include peas, beans, soybeans, chickpeas, and lentils. All of these are included, including peanuts. Peanuts are also legumes, and they're really healthy because of their high fiber content and also their high protein content. By the way, the same applies to green leafy vegetables, cabbage varieties, salads, various types of nuts, and especially pine nuts and chestnuts. By the way, lemon is also a metabolism booster. And that's why it's a good idea to drink a large glass of water before meals and maybe add the juice of a lemon to it. Why is that the case when eating? There is actually the thermic effect of food, which, by the way, simply means when eating to lose weight. Through the increased consumption of energy during the digestion process, and specifically through a good protein content in the food. Therefore, for example, I recommend reducing simple carbohydrates in the evening, meaning white carbohydrates in general, and instead opting for legumes or even pseudo cereals, which is absolutely fine as well. If, for example, you don't feel completely full after eating and still feel like having a snack, then I also recommend nuts, for instance, because they support the thermic effect of food extremely well. Now comes tip number 4. This thermic effect of food I just described. You can boost it a bit more, for example, with spicy spices like chili, pepper, ginger, but also turmeric is included. And if you love spicy food, you should absolutely enjoy it. So the spicy spices also boost your metabolism, especially the one you care about most right now, which is fat metabolism. The 5th tip is about your sleep. Make sure you finally get enough rest. So is it enough sleep now? definitely we need 7 to 8 hours. And if we get that, then the next morning is a good one. Especially if you ate legumes the night before. Why is that? Because that feeling of fullness still lasts until the next morning. By the way, that's called the second meal effect, and it automatically makes you eat less. But if you haven't slept enough, then unfortunately your body releases the hunger hormone ghrelin, which then leads you to definitely eat a bigger meal than you would if you were well rested. That means little sleep makes you hungry, and you don't really need that if you're already carrying too many extra pounds. And last but not least, here comes tip number 6. Simply drinking enough water or green tea are first-class fat burners. Especially fat metabolism depends on the amount of fluid in your tissues. But what you should also know is that just a glass of water, which actually contains 0 calories but burns calories when you drink it, and especially if it's cold. And the colder the water, the more calories it burns. A really cold glass of water, that's what people assume. 200 milliliters burn 25 calories, and if you drink 10 of those a day, so about 200 milliliters each, then on one hand you've already taken in enough fluids, and on top of that you've burned an extra 250 calories. I would call that optimal, wouldn't you? So drink enough, drink cold water, and always drink water before your meals. And then your metabolism will be boosted on its own. And of course, you'll keep losing weight this way too. So those were some important things. Tips to optimize and support your metabolism, mainly, honestly, your fat metabolism. And you can find more tips like these in my new book, Guaranteed Weight Loss. By the way, these are tips that aren't widely known. I also write about the right exercises. And there are the absolute best recipes to lose weight without feeling hungry and while staying in a good mood. And maybe to finally reach your desired weight for good. Since there are so many people who have trouble with their weight, it would be really great if you could share and link this video. Of course, I would also love to know, do you have any tips that I might not even know exist for losing weight? Or what about the topic of metabolism and weight loss in general? Have you already had a lot of experience with that, or do you still fall for those diets too? Just write your comments down below under my video. And if you want to see more of my videos, you can do that here. Or of course, what would be really great is if you subscribe to my channel, you can do that here. Otherwise, I'm glad you were here. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Maybe by then you'll have your metabolism already really revved up. Bye.